Good morning, everyone. We're back here for another episode of Chalk Talk at Chalk It Up Strength. My name is Edward Allecdan. My name is Edward, and this is Rob.
What's going on, guys?
And today we're going to talk about sustainable training for powerlifting. So earlier today, we polled the members of the gym who are training and who we've coached or who we're currently coaching, and we asked them what are their top 3 tips for sustainable training. And there was a common theme between what everyone was saying, and everyone seemed to talk about pieces of recovery, be it nutrition, sleep, stress management, hydration, establishing a foundation for their training. So not just going in and doing 1 rep maxes every day, but actually building their work capacity, building their general physical preparedness so that they could handle these higher intensities of training. Training in a positive, supporting environment where it's not just them putting their headphones on, going to a corner of the gym and sort of saying, screw everybody else, I'm just here for myself, but having a team that cared about them, their goals, so that when their motivation was low, they would still be able to come in and do their training. And one of the final things that everyone mentioned was something about mindset, be it being positive toward training or trusting the program. And Rob and I are going to touch on these points a little more in depth, but we're going to keep today pretty brief. So, would you like to talk about one of these things first?
Recovery, nutrition, eat, sleep. That's what we got there.
Yeah.
And then what is the last one? Stress?
Stress management.
Okay. Eating, sleeping, everybody knows that just from the basic thing you've read online or whatever. Obviously, it's very, very important. Sleeping, and this is all specific to each athlete and what you can and can't do, and everybody's lives are different. We're all busy, but obviously we want optimal amount of sleep for each person. That may vary, but getting enough sleep that you can recover. Same thing with eating. I know we all eat, good during the week, and then we just wing it on the weekends, and that kind of takes away from our week. We all do it. We're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. So getting the right nutrition in when you're, focusing on your training pretty hard, and say you have a goal set, maybe a meet coming up or something like that, really dialing in your nutrition is going to be very important for recovery. I know that when my nutrition is bad, my recovery days they're a lot longer. Usually I can recover in a day or two. If I'm eating kind of shitty, I'll be sore for 3 or 4 days. So I know that's a big part of mine. And then stress management. I touch a lot on stress and like mindset with a lot of athletes that I talk to. I would say with both of our athletes that we talk to. Yeah. But stress is a huge thing. We all have stress. Jobs, kids, dogs, stress at the stoplight, bank account, everybody's got it. But stress management when you're, doing serious strength training is definitely something important, and you really want to, take your time to bring that down a little bit before you worry about, huge numbers and this and that. Try and get the outside factors that you can control under control.
And I think one, like, that's the first step, identifying what the context of your training is. So say you had one meet where you were sleeping 8 hours a day, you were in a caloric surplus the entire training cycle, and you like everything was great in your life. You weren't having any issues with your spouse, sleep was going well, work was really relaxing, and you could just devote all your time to training. And in your mind, you have this memory of, I was doing 6x10 in the volume block, and then in the strength block, I was killing my 8 sets of 3, and my top sets, my RPE sets were going great. And then like that meet went well, you take a break, and then you come back and you have another meet you're preparing for. But this time around, you're having some arguments with your spouse. Sleep isn't going as well because you're stressing about all that stuff. Eating isn't as consistent because you're a little strapped on time, and you're just feeling a little crappier this time around. But in your head, you're like, you know what? I've done training like this before. I could do it again. That's where the problem is, where we mismatch the volume of your training to what you're capable of recovering from. So all those things that Rob talked about, if we can identify that, okay, I'm used to sleeping 8 hours per night, but this time I'm sleeping around 5 hours on average per night, maybe I can tolerate a little bit less training and I should adjust my training accordingly. Or I'm not in a caloric surplus this time around. I'm in a caloric deficit. My eating is very erratic, so I probably can't recover as quickly, or I can't tolerate as much training as I had tolerated in the past. And I need to put my ego in check and just sort of trust that, okay, my recovery capacity is not as good right now, so I need to decrease the amount of training I'm doing, or else I'm going to dip into overtraining that much easier. So,
Part of it.
so that is how these factors related to recovery influence what your training is like, and we want to match the amount of training you're doing to what you're capable of recovering from.
Yeah, it's not like he's saying. It's not always going to be the same. First time around, you had great things lined up. Second time around, maybe you didn't. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to kill every single number like you did the first time. And matching that training is the most important part.
So it's like step 1, identifying those things, 2, matching it, and then 3, being able to adapt the plan day to day. Because some days you're going to have good sleep, some days you're going to have bad sleep. Some days you're going to have good nutrition, other days you're going to have one meal after 10 hours, and then you're going to train at night. And what do we want to do? We want to even out those spikes so that training is more consistent, training is more predictable. And when we go into training, how we go about training just feels more consistent on a day-to-day basis. And that segues into our next topic, which is having a good foundation for your training. So it's very common for powerlifters to come into training or just come into the sport and be like, I played some years of sport, and powerlifting looks pretty cool. It's like an extreme sport. I'm going to do 3x3 for the day, and it's going to be really heavy, and I'm going to rest about 15 minutes between sets, crank up the caffeine, crank up the ammonia, and the music, and like not really think about technique, because I'm a lone wolf and I'm a warrior, and a lion and a cheetah and animals, they don't warm up, so I don't need to warm up, right? And you go into the training, and it like the first week is pretty good, and the second week is pretty good, and like you could do this for a couple months, but then by the 4th month or the 5th month, you're kind of like, oh, my shoulder kind of hurts all the time, my back is always stiff, my hips are always tight. What's going on?
You just wrap some shit around it, then you're fine.
You just wrap some shit, and then you
train. And then you just train, you're fine.
Yeah, and then people are just like, oh, powerlifting is this sport where you just accept that you're going to be stiff for the rest of your life, and you're not going to be able to enjoy like all your physical activity outside of the gym.
Like
yeah, that's my kind of sport. And people wonder why there's this stigma about powerlifting. It's because people haven't set the foundation for the training. So if you get into the sport and you get your Inzer belt, not saying Inzer's bad, but you just get a belt, and then you throw knee sleeves on. Your elbows hurt, you throw some elbow sleeves on. Your wrists hurt, throw some wrist wraps on.
What if your head hurts?
If your head hurts, you just take more caffeine,
Perfect.
Just hit your head against the rack. You're fine.
Hey, I do that.
I can speak to this personally.
Okay.
And then you don't even bother training some sort of squat pattern. You just jump right into a low bar squat because your favorite coach who wrote a book says to only low bar squat because it's the strongest, most athletic squat. And then you look on your social media, and there are all these people who are having this super wide stance sumo deadlift who are really strong. So that's how you want to deadlift for the rest of your life. And then your back always hurts and your hips are always tight. And it's because you haven't set the foundation for strength training, because you're just trying to layer on all of these extreme positions on a foundation that is not used to having your hips way out here and your shoulders and your wrist and your elbows cranked way back here. So what are we trying to get out here with foundation?
Set a foundation. We just take the time to work your way up, do some volume. It's okay to train below 70%. You can start at 50. I'm even going to say this. You can start at 45 and then go 50 and 55. Get a solid foundation where you're moving around, you're resting a little bit less, you get a lot of high reps in, and then you start to build your strength on top of that. Don't just pile a bunch of shit on top of a thing of sand. Yeah, that. So foundation, take the time to do the foundation.
And what is the practical way that this would look? Instead of jumping right into a 12-week competition cycle because you want to compete at this competition with your best buddies, maybe you take 16 weeks, maybe you take 20 weeks to prepare, where the first 4 to 8 weeks you are laying that foundation, be it in technique, be it in hypertrophy, be it in just having the right attitude or having the right balance of life stressors so that you can support a 12-week cycle without your life going to complete crap. Yeah. And like powerlifting being the only thing that holds it all together. But
the foundation. What?
Yeah, set the foundation. So maybe we'll do mindset and then environment after that.
Mindset.
Yeah. Being
around training.
Yeah. So we talked about this on the very first episode. That was actually the topic of the first episode, having the sort of right mindset for training, or at least knowing how to approach training with a mindset that is conducive to you making long-term progress. And that is like the summary of that was come into training knowing about the variables you can control, and then giving yourself the opportunity to let training go well and not sort of sabotaging yourself from the get-go and thinking, I hate squats, my training's going to go poorly, I'm just going to get through this, grit my teeth, and at least I got bench and deadlift to look forward to. Instead, thinking of it as, it's like my squat, there are these things, my squat doesn't really feel that good right now, but here are the things that I can work on. I'm going to work on those things today so that my squat gets better. And then I trust that over time, maybe my squat will move from feeling like shit to feeling pretty good, or maybe like to feeling average. And then as I work on that for another year, my squat will go from feeling average to feeling good. And then maybe I'll actually enjoy squatting.
Yeah, you give it the chance to feel better.
Yeah, and it's a little hard at first to trust that that's going to happen, but if you can have the reassurance of your coach or your teammates or other people that what you're doing, the technique you're using is not bad at all, that you're actually figuring out some of the cues you're working with, and that you don't have to just constantly look at your videos and overthink like, oh, my knee caved in just a tiny bit, I think my knee's going to explode, I think my back's going to blow out because I just lost a tiny bit of abs. It's like, no, it's all right. It's like, you're not going to get it perfect ever, but if we can have that trend of technique be a little more consistent every single time you come in, we can't ask for more. And then if you can do that over and over and over and over, your trust in the training process will get better and better and better and better until you're totally bought into training and you're like, I could do 5 sets of 12 with a 3-1-3 tempo in my squats, and I trust that this is going to carry over to my back squats, even though doing that in the moment is going to friggin' suck. Mm-hmm. So last piece, environment.
Training in an environment where it's, how do we even say that? Training in a good environment where people are uplifting and supporting you and your goals. That's like the best way to say it.
Yeah, so we have all these things we talked about, right? Like your recovery, nutrition, sleep, stress management, setting a foundation, having a good mindset. Like, it's a lot to ask of a person who is just starting to just do that when they're still freaking out about the 20 cues that they just learned in the goblet squat. Good luck trying to get all these other things in place, right? However, if you have an environment that you could come into that has all those habits in place and people around you are practicing those habits, it makes it a lot easier for you to internalize those things day after day after day. Because even though you're focusing on, say you come in for the first time, you're focusing on goblet squats and breathing and bracing, there's some other guy who's pretty friendly, or some girl in the gym who's friendly and talkative, and she tells you about her training and like the issues she's facing with, or she's dealing with in training, but how she's focusing on her cues, or how her training's going a little poorly, but she knows that's because she was binge drinking the night before and her sleep isn't that good. But she, in spite of that, she's able to keep a good mindset toward training.
And she started in the same place doing tempo goblet squats, working on technique.
Yeah, and just like being around people who've been in your shoes, and they can see like, oh, this person's a beginner. I know what it was like when I was a beginner, and it felt really awkward, and it kind of sucked, and I kind of hated it, and I didn't want to keep coming back. But I did because there were some friendly people around, and they supported me, and they could empathize with me in this awkward beginner place that I was in. So if there's one thing that, like one lesson we can take from CrossFit, is that being part of a community can get you to come to training that seems like it really sucks.
No matter what the workout is.
Yeah, so peer pressure is great.
Train in an environment where people are gonna support you and motivate you. It doesn't matter if you squat 600 pounds, you're doing a tempo goblet squat, working on driving your knees out. People will talk to each other, and they're gonna, help you reach your goals every single day. And that's what we want to go for.
Yeah. And if in this episode we could really make the points of sustainable training as concise as possible, so you're not going on social media and looking for all these here's 5 hacks to make your training better, or this and that. It's like, here's some really simple things that can be a tough pill to swallow for some people whose default mode of action is training's going well, I'm gonna roll on my lacrosse ball, or training's not going well, I'm gonna take 3 times as much pre-workout instead of 1 time, or like some weird things that aren't gonna work, but they make you feel better in the moment, so you're just like, oh, I'm gonna do that. But no, the big ideas are you eating enough? Are you sleeping enough? Is your training designed intelligently? Do you have the right mindset in executing that training? And then lastly, if you have the good fortune of having a place nearby that can facilitate this, can you train in a supportive environment? If you have those things in place, your training is probably going to be very sustainable.
and you're going to get stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. That's it right there, huh?
That's it.
That's it. Tell them where they can find you.
You can find me at Chalk It Up Strength most mornings and evenings. And you can find me on social media on Instagram at JR Alekdan.
You can find me on Instagram at The Great White Rhino and at Chalk It Up Strength. Pretty much anytime the sun is out, I'm here the entire day.
Mm-hmm.
We will catch you guys next time. Later.
Bye-bye.